Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. McCoy, and it's time for our weekly gathering. It's 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. If you're joining live, just know that I'm happy to see you, or for you to see me, I guess, but I'm happy that we are able to gather together once more. And I really appreciate your feedback and just for the things that you share, even in this space. Just know that if you say something or you type something here on Facebook, I will respond immediately. And if I don't see it, then I'll be sure to respond after. Want to also welcome those on the conference call line. We have a conference call line as well, if you would like to join that way. And also you can join via YouTube. So again, welcome to everyone. So glad to have you here on this evening as we continue with our 4-week series. I've been walking through for the past 3 weeks, so this would make the last week, walking through the series talking about racialized trauma. And I've been using this book entitled My Grandmother's Hands by Mr. Resma Menakem. And just so glad that people have been really responding in various ways, and just want to say congratulations again to Miss Barbara Williams for being gifted a copy of this book. And again, this will be our last time for this series purpose of delving into this book. I want to let you all know that there is a person who would join us often, and she wouldn't really say anything, and that's okay. People who do that are awesome people too. Good evening to you. And she died this morning, and so I tell you, she was a wonderful human being, and it's just interesting that she died on one of our Thursdays. So we are praying. Let's just keep folks in prayer in their grief and loss. And again, congratulations to Miss Williams for being gifted that book. So when we consider this racialized trauma, I've been talking about it for the past 3 weeks. This again is the last week. Must be reminded that, as the author states in the book, Mr. Resma Menakem, race is a myth. It's something that was made up in the 17th century, and it's been carried forward. It's been carried forward day by day, century by century, into the present. And there's one wise person who said whiteness is one of the biggest and most long-running scams ever perpetuated. Whiteness is one of the biggest and most long-running scams ever perpetuated. It's really a classic example of what therapists call gaslighting. And I told you all that at Shaw University Divinity School right now, I teach a course entitled A Theological Response to Trauma, but I also teach another course called The Black Church and Domestic Abuse and Violence. And in that course, I talk specifically about gaslighting. So in the book, when the author mentions gaslighting and therapists, I want to make sure we all understand what that is. So if I gaslight you, that means that I get you to override your own experience and your own perceptions by really repeating lie after lie after lie over and over again. And then I try to prove what I'm saying by adding more lies and adding more denials. You're telling me how you feel, what you think. But gaslighting means that I want to override that experience with my lies. And so I continue to do that with my misdirection. And eventually what happens to you is, if it's successful, what happens is that you start to accept my lies as truth. That's gaslighting at its best, or I should say it is worse. So if I get you to accept my lies and to deny your reality by just continuing that thing, and it's snowballing, and eventually you say, maybe I am wrong. I've been successful in that practice. So just know that whiteness is like that. Let me give you an example. Gaslighting, lie after lie in America. Oh, I have one. Since you were in school, grade school, you have been taught this lie about Columbus discovering America. That's a great example. And so that lie is perpetuated every year because it's a holiday, so it must be true. So many people, it's in history books, so it must be true. Well, that's what you're going to think, and that's what you're going to embrace because you've been gaslighted. That's an example of a collective type experience that I can think of. But I know you've got it. Some of you already know what it is. But the fact of the matter is, institutions and structures and beliefs and practices and even narratives have been created around this lie, this idea, this myth that whiteness is like a real thing. And it's one of those things that we have to really recognize collectively in America that it's a delusion. Because if we don't recognize it as a delusion and accept that whiteness is a myth, accept it for the lie that it is, then it might as well be real. It might as well be real. So when you hear me say that and you read it in books, that's what that's founded on. So I just wanted to reiterate that when we start talking about race, it's a social construct. And when we start talking about whiteness, it's a myth. It's an invention. And there were always laborers. So when people start talking about, so February is about to end. And one of the things I really appreciate about February is that people start thinking about all of Black history and not just thinking that Black people or non-white people were slaves. The fact of the matter is those bodies were enslaved. So my aunt told me just a couple of weeks ago, listen to this, I didn't know this. And she said it this way, but I'm going to correct it so that we will know, okay? She said, your great-grandfather was a slave. And I didn't know that. So can you imagine? I was like, wait, what? What? My great-great-grandfather was a slave. My great-grandfather, she said, he was a Baptist preacher. He was a pastor of a church in Winston-Salem, North Carolina called New Light. And so when she said my great-great-grandfather was a slave, I know what she means. I know what people mean when they say that. But just remember that those persons should not be identified by what happened to them. They should not be identified by the oppression that was placed on them. They were enslaved persons. They were not born slaves. They were born into a slave system. So when folks were taken from Africa, they were scientists, they were teachers, they were brilliant minds, mathematicians. So the persons that were stolen, those bodies were not slaves. Those were freed persons who were brought to Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 and placed in chains. But understand that originally laborers were imported not only from Africa, but also from Scotland, from Ireland, from England. Have you heard people say who are, they have white skin? Have you heard them say, well, my parents were immigrants? They say that, right? Well, it's because they understand that there were laborers who were imported from places like England and Ireland and Scotland. So that's right. They're telling us the truth, but let's go a little deeper than that, because these laborers, they were known as, you might hear them say, indentured servants, bondsmen, and they were employed for a specific number of years by wealthy landowners. And then after they had fulfilled their contract of servitude, those persons were given freedom. So then when we start talking and people say, let's say a Black person is talking about how, like I talk about my great-great-grandfather was enslaved, and someone was to say, well, my great-great-grandfather was an indentured servant. Well, they were given many times a chunk of money or sometimes a small parcel of land. Some of those laborers, they even entered into those arrangements willingly, in a willful type manner. Some of them, however, were tricked or forced. Have you ever seen the movie 12 Years a Slave? That gentleman was tricked and forced to be enslaved. So then what happened is there was this growing class of free peasants whose skin colors really ranged from very pale to dark. But in the late 1600s and in the and I see what you're saying, Sister Barbara. So I will explain the term social construct. Okay, I will do that. So when the white and the Black immigrants worked and lived together on plantations, they were really owned by these white strong, predominant male bodies, white male bodies. But what happened was the landowners, they had an idea. They said, okay, so we see white bodies and we see non-white bodies out here doing these things. So you know what? Let's create a divide and conquer strategy. So what they did was they told the white bodies, you are working with these non-white bodies. Yes, you are. But you need to understand that you're just like us. You're white. You're just like us. You're going to have land and you can work. But they told the black bodies or the non-white bodies, you're not like us. You are not like us. You're black and you're completely unlike us. And so what it did was it created a divide. So when people start talking about it's the same thing, actually, it's not. So when you hear someone say black bodies are the only bodies, that were enslaved in America, that's what they mean, so that we can understand the full story. So there has been an assault on black bodies to the point where it didn't just assault the physical body, but it also assaulted the mental capacity of black bodies. Because even if I set you free, if you will. Let's use that word loosely, but if I take the shackles off your wrists and the shackles off your neck and the shackles off your ankles, if I've enslaved your mind, if there's a type of mental bondage, then you're still going to be loyal to me regardless. And you may not even want to leave me as massa because I've enslaved your mind. So there is a mental bondage. We need to break the chains of psychological slavery, even in the black community, because what was done to black bodies was not just something exterior, but it was interior as well. So, Miss Barbara Williams, when I say social construct, well, in order to control a group of people in a society, there are certain messages that you have to give them. So if I want to control everybody here on this evening, then what I do, let's say we are a society right now. We are a group of people. So I see, Tucker, Britton, Cobb, Culp, Harris, Bell, Williams, and Vaughn. So that's the 8 people that I see. It may be more people here, but the people that have said good evening to me and good evening to you, I see you. So there's 8 of you, and then let's say I'm number 9. So, Miss Williams, the society consists of 9, I'm not even putting up 9 people, right? So we are a community. Well, I can create any idea as the head. Let's say that I'm the dominant of the culture between the 9 of us. And so that means that I get to create how I want this society to really operate. So then I'm going to tell the men here, I'm going to say something to them like, well, if you have hair on your face, then you're more masculine than those men who don't have hair on their face. So I'm constructing something within this society because I want to control all of you. So then it's about what I tell you are. I don't want the men on here to think independently. So what I don't want you to do is shave the hair off your face. So then I create this idea, as I was saying before, like whiteness is a myth. So now I'm creating this myth that men with hair on their face, you all are the stronger ones in the group. There's only 9 of us. So the 8 of you I'm controlling. Then I start gaslighting, and I start giving you all these lies that I want you to accept as truth. Like, oh, you women, if you don't do something to change your hair, you're less than the women who do something to change their hair. Or if you change your hair, how dare you? So you see, Miss Williams, I, as the dominant culture, can create any type of idea. It doesn't have to be true. Any type of idea I want and perpetuate it. And even when I die, it lives on. It lives longer than I do. And so that's why white supremacy or as Mr. Resma Menachem talks about in this book, white body supremacy has held for so long, because it is a social construct. We pass it down from generation to generation because this is who we are. So then I've been doing this for the past 3 weeks to really help us to reckon with who we want to be. So we can see many times from the history who we are. I mean, the parts of history that they don't teach us in grade school. We get to see who we really are as America. You know, and with this sitting president, we get to see this is who we really are. You know, now this guy's giving people permission to do a lot of the things that I'm talking about right now. You know, it's like, and so everybody's like, I can't believe. How can you not believe when you look at the history of America? So then the type of healing that I've been talking about is paramount to us becoming really great, better as Americans. We need to be healed. We need to do the work. But as he continues, and I hope that I explained that in a way that makes sense. I hope I did, Miss Williams. So as I continue to move on, one of the things that Mr. Resma Menakem talks about in this book, he talks about assaulting the black heart. And he starts to talk about the things that really, you know, remember now, he's concerned as a therapist about what happens in our bodies, and says that dealing with racialized trauma is not just something that's cognitive, but it's actually something that happens in our bodies. And so he talks about in this particular portion of the book, and some of you went and bought it. So let me tell you where I am, okay? Since you bought it, let me make sure that you can go with me, okay? And some of you may have already had it before I talked about it. I'm in chapter 5, okay? Chapter 5, Assaulting the Black Heart, all right? And if you want to know exactly where I am, you know, I want you to know, okay? So if you get this book, I'm about to start talking about what's on page 75, where he talks about, and I highlighted it. He says, perhaps the most damaging yet least visible assault on black hearts is an ongoing lack of human regard. So then he says, here are some ways in which white Americans routinely fail to show regard for black human beings. I'm going to talk about that, okay? I'm going to talk about that. But before I do that, okay, so that's on page 76 if you have the book, okay? Oh, I see you, Miss Williams. You're welcome. So I did explain social construct well. Okay, I'm grateful for that. And I know that you were gifted the book. I'm glad you got it today. So if you want to, you can open yours right there to page 76. But before I do that, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I want to do that at the end because I want to do the body practice. And I talked to you about that in our other 3 gatherings in the book. I want to do the body practices that relate to those circles that you see there. I circle that because I'm going to talk about, he says, white Americans routinely fail to show regard for black human beings in these ways. So I'm going to share that. But he also talks about what black bodies do to black bodies. And before I end this, I want to be sure that that I bring that out as well. Because on Sunday, I preached in Charlotte, North Carolina at a wonderful church. And it was their Heritage Sunday. And one of the things, and this was before I read this chapter, I mean, this is something that you're going to already know if you're in the black community. But one of the things that I wanted to focus on in that sermon, because I bring a lot of books and a lot of authors and a lot of our ancestors into the pulpit with me, so that I'm sure that we're hearing from various sources. I think that's very important. Well, one of the things that I tried to do in that sermon, and I don't know if I did it well, but I talked about how in the black community, because again, it was Heritage Sunday, how sometimes we can be so critical of one another. So before I get to talking about white people and how they show disregard for black humans, I want to talk a little bit about that idea that sometimes, you know, as he even talks about, so I'm not going to just talk me, I'm going to let you hear him because I think I talk about it a whole lot and I hope I did well on Sunday. Oh, hello there. Okay, I see you all saying hi. Miss Nunu, hello there. Oh, and Miss LaShawn. Okay, so Miss Nunu was invited by Miss LaShawn, and Miss LaShawn is from the church I preached at. Yes, Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church. Pastor Aaron McCoy. You did it amazingly. Oh, thank you. God bless you. I'm glad you're here because you're able to see where a lot of this comes from. So this is my primary book when I preach. This is it, the Holy Bible. And then there are so many other bright minds, wonderful minds that I want us to make sure we know. I see you saying, Oh, thank you, Sister Samantha. Let's see. Brother Harris, you are so correct. I told my daughters our ancestors didn't come here as slaves. That's right. We came as engineers, leaders, generals. That's right. Kings, queens. We were highly respected in the community we were taken from. Slave is a label they place on us and it's stuck. There you go. So we have to watch how we do that. The slaves, you hear people say that all the time, right? Those were free bodies that were enslaved. And so as I think about, I told you all, my aunt just told me that and the way she said it, you know, she's about in her 70s. You know, the way she said it, she said, your great-great-grandfather was a slave. You know, I immediately was like, he wasn't a slave, he was free, you know. Yes, God bless you all. Thank you so much for the encouragement. And just pray for me because there are going to be more sermons to preach this year. And I just want to be sure that I'm well-rounded in what it is that I do, okay? I do the same thing in my classroom over at the Divinity School. But listen to what he says. So if you have the book on page 78, he says the hearts, psyches, and souls of African Americans have also been routinely attacked by another group. So before I get to the white people, ourselves. Many African Americans berate themselves and each other for being black, for being too black, for not being black enough, for being less than perfect, or simply for existing. We compare our bodies against the superior qualities of white bodies using the brown paper bag test, the blue vein test, the fine tooth comb test, the lip size test, and so on. Have you known black folks to do that? He says oppressed people often internalize the trauma-based values and strategies of their oppressors. These values and strategies need to be consciously noticed, called out as traumatic retentions, and they need to be challenged. Again, that's what I'm here for. So when people get upset with me, well, Dr. McCoy, doesn't have to be that deep. I mean, you're always talking about hair and you're talking about this. That's because I have to call it out. Because after I call it out, even if you don't like it, you can't unsee what you've seen and you can't unhear what you've heard. And I say to myself, even if people don't get it now, I've had people get upset with me, black folks. Even if they get upset with me now, there may come a time when I'm dead and gone. I don't know why people say dead and gone. When you're dead, you're gone. But where they may say, Dr. McCoy said something. I heard somebody say something. So now I'm trying to give it to you through a book so that you'll know that I'm not the only person thinking this way. I'm not trying to come against black folk. I just know that we need to think about these things and understand that this white supremacy issue, it is parading in our community. And we need to say, no, that is not us. That is something that the dominant culture has placed on us. And we need to break free from that because that's not accurate. I know it starts to look like culture, but that's not who we are. So when we see those listings, black folks, as for the culture, what does that mean? Do you understand African culture? Do you understand that you are African surviving in America? Do you understand that you are an hyphenated American? Asian American, right? African American. White folks walk around, it doesn't say European American, it just says white or Caucasian. Do you see that? Do you understand that? So he says that black Americans need to do this with other black Americans. In the church, for example. I'm in the church. In the black church. In the school, for example. I'm in the school. I'm at an HBCU. I serve these communities because I love them and because of the things that I've been enlightened, you know, towards that type of enlightenment. When I meet another black person, another black body that's been enlightened, I'm so excited. And then I want to do the work of enlightening other black bodies. I see you, Miss Michelle. Sometimes we are our worst enemy. That's it. And that's what I'm talking about. And Miss LaShawn, don't believe everything you think or was taught. There you go. So we have to unlearn some things. So black Americans need to do this with other black Americans, he says. Native Americans need to do it with other Native Americans. American Jews need to do it with other American Jews, and so on. He says these values and strategies then need to be unlearned. There you go. Look at that. Miss LaShawn, you're on it. These values and strategies then need to be unlearned, but not just by the thinking brain, but by the body through its ongoing relationships with other healing bodies. So I believe that in this space, I told you all that, and Miss LaShawn, it was your church that gave me a beautiful mug when I got there last year when I preached. You all, somebody's listening, because I always say that my ministry is impacting lives, healing hearts, and growing faith. And you all gave me a mug with that on it. So this is part of my ministry. This is the healing hearts. That's why you see heal above my head. Next week, you won't see heal above my head. But that's what this is about, because he says, and I hadn't read this book before, you know, my vision of my ministry, but he says, through its ongoing relationships with other healing bodies. So I'm doing this because I believe that there are other healing bodies out there. Absolutely. And so we're doing the work together. So he says white body supremacy. And let me say what that is for those who may be joining for the first time. So I've been talking about this for the past 3 weeks. This is the last week, but you can go back and look at those videos. Oh, and by the way, Facebook gave me a message saying that after 30 days, really soon, the videos will go away. So I need you to remember that I have a YouTube channel. So it's not supposed to happen like for maybe another 6 months or something. But like if you wanted to watch, you know, things that I've posted from forever ago, you know, we went through an entire Old Testament together. Well, that's not going to be available on Facebook forever, but it will be on my YouTube channel. Okay. So I'm glad I thought about that. But white body supremacy, what he said about white body supremacy is that no matter what the white body thinks, no matter what the white body feels, no matter where the white body comes from, no matter who inhabits the white body, that white body automatically benefits from that white skin. That's what white body supremacy is about. Okay, so he doesn't just say white supremacy. He says white body supremacy. And those of us who are non-white, I think that we have examples of that. You know, I remember standing somewhere beside a white body and it just seemed like I was invisible, you know, but that white body benefited from the white skin that it's in. And it does not matter, or that they're in. I don't mean it. People are not an it. I don't like when people say that, even when they're talking about unborn babies and they say, well, what is it? No, what will your baby be? You know, no person is an it. So, but I've been in situations where the white body was recognized and me as the non-white body just standing there like, do they even see me right here? But the white body automatically benefits from white skin. So that's what white body supremacy is about. So he says white body supremacy lives in the bodies of most Americans, including many African Americans. Many of our bodies hold the false images and concepts. And we have felt a sense of inferiority because of those falsehoods. Now, I just said that. That's not in the book. So I'm reading some of the book, but I'm also saying like my own stuff. That's why you need to get the book. And then you need to just come back and look at this because this is the kind of work I do. I hadn't written a book, but he's saying the same things, you know, and maybe you're thinking that, well, you are thinking the same things because you're saying the same things too. So I just encourage you to get the book because I don't want to misspeak this, be respectful to this author. So I'm trying to tell you when I'm talking and when he's talking. So he says they create black self-hate and self-repulsion, which are both trauma responses. So that's what black bodies do. He says African-American self-hate plays out in multiple ways. Listen to this. This is not me. This is the author. African-American self-hate plays out in multiple ways. The first involves disrespecting and distrusting each other in everyday interactions. Have you heard that as a black body? I'm not going to that black business. I mean, did they mark up the prices? Self-hate plays out in different ways. Maybe you didn't even think of that as self-hate. Distrusting each other in everyday interactions, deeming each other worthless, inflicting violence on other black bodies in the same neighborhood, calling each other the N word. I talked about that on Sunday in the sermon. Comparing ourselves to monkeys and so on. So that's the first self-hate, how it plays out. Okay, the second, he says, involves prominent African Americans trying to renounce their blackness. For example, Clarence Thomas, Ben Carson. Or they publicly denounce supportive aspects of African American culture, like Stacey Dash has done. And you can just Google her and figure that out. In many of us, this self-hate lives so deep in our bodies that our thinking brains are unaware of it. We don't even realize that we hate something about blackness. Because white body supremacy has been standardized, it operates unquestioned and often invisibly. So I'm doing this because I'm trying to shine the light on it. You know, you hear somebody say white supremacy is, and then we just kind of move on. You know, no. We need to sit with it. And that's why I'm doing this. So just remember that trauma is not destiny, okay? It's something that we deal with, but it's not destiny. So let me get back to where I circled this, and then I'll be done. You see, it's so much to share with you. 4 weeks is not even close. And when I have a semester at the school, at the university, that's never enough either. But we have to do what I have to do the way that we do it. Hopefully you'll get the book for yourself. But lastly, so I talked about how he talks about in chapter, what did I say this was? 5, Assaulting the Black Heart. He talks about the black. Yes, Miss LaShawn, I am a masterpiece. That's right. And you got your notifications. There you go. There you go. And I'm so grateful that you are bringing that up. So that means I must have at least got the point across. I always say, God, you don't have to make me the best preacher. Just make me effective. Make sure I stick to this right here. Make sure I stick to this. And then make sure that I don't become lazy to where I don't bring in some other things for us, because you're worth it. You're worth it. So thank you for that. So Assaulting the Black Heart. So then he talks about, and if you have the book, I'm going to move to back to that page 75. So he says, and I said this already, but I'm going to say it again just to set it up. Perhaps the most damaging yet least visible assault on black bodies is a lack of human regard. So he then talks about like black people. But he also says, here are some ways in which white Americans routinely fail to show regard for black human beings. And I'm going to just read these here, okay? Listen to what he says. He says, not listening or paying attention to someone or outright ignoring them as if black bodies were invisible. Second one, interrupting or talking over black people. Number 3, not taking someone seriously. For example, you don't really mean that, or you don't really think that, or you don't really feel that way, or it's wrong to feel that way. Number 4, giving a brief, minimalist, or non-committal response, like, fine, whatever you say, to a black body, or yes, I care, I need to go now. Here's another one. Refusing to acknowledge someone's lived experience, either by denying that it happened or by fleeing into statistics or legalisms. Here's the next one. Acting visibly frustrated and impatient with someone as if his or her presence is burdensome, or as if he or she is saying something childish or something ludicrous. Then he says, saying, be reasonable, then demanding something unreasonable or impossible. And then here's the last one. He says, white Americans routinely fail to show regard to black human beings by speaking words of care or concern, but without empathy or sincerity. This is especially common among police and elected officials when dealing with racialized issues and with crimes committed against African Americans. For instance, a police chief may say, we've got to do a better job training our officers so that they avoid racial profiling. But in such a way that its actually unspoken message becomes, I'm saying words, but I'm required to say those words. I'm saying the words I'm required to say, but they're just for show. I intend to continue with business as usual. Reza Menachem, the author, says the main messages behind all of these are the same. First, you're not important. And second, this right here that I'm doing right now, I and others like me, we're going to keep doing it indefinitely. We're not going to change. And so he says that people experience these types of things not people, black bodies experience this type of thing, in our bodies. And so for African Americans, they are achingly familiar. So it's like, I know for me, let me talk my experience, because I'm not going to speak for every black person, okay? I'm going to speak for me as a black woman in a black body. It becomes so familiar for me that sometimes I have to say, I'm not going to go in there today, because I just don't have the emotional capacity. I am spent. I am so spent. I just can't deal with that today. Then there are other times when I'll say, okay, McCoy, put your face on, and then I go into the whole Christian thing, of course, but I remind myself that I was black before I was Christian. So I don't try to use religion to minimize the reality of racism in America. I'm not going to do that. You can do that. But if it's racist, it's racist. And I'm still Christian. But again, I recognize this beautiful badge of blackness before I did this beautiful book called the Holy Bible. So I have to hold together my blackness and, my Christianity and all of that together. And when that gets challenging, sometimes I just don't go certain places. So that's how I interpret what he's saying. So he says that everyone, no matter what their skin color, experiences such minor violations occasionally. And he starts talking about microaggressions, and I'm going to give a real definition for what that is. If you know, you know. If you don't, we'll learn together. But he says when these types of things, when these violations occur only now and then, they're easy to shrug off as tolerable, then you can heal from it and forget. But when those violations happen repeatedly, whether over months or for an individual or centuries for a group, in those situations, those different people over time, it can create what he calls that hazy trauma. And hazy trauma is trauma that can't be traced back to a single or specific event, but you just know that this thing feels familiar. I can't trace a specific event, but this is just so, people call it, what is that? Not rendezvous. Deja vu. That's it. People call it deja vu. I just know this is just, but we're carrying the weight of the ancestors. That's what you feel, because America has not changed in that way. So that's what you're feeling. So it's like a type of hazy trauma. I don't really know, but these things have happened over a period of time, and it's happened to the group, not just to me. And let me just say, when it happens to the group is my black brother who deals with things, and he tells me, no, I didn't deal with it, but vicariously through him, hazy trauma. Where did that come from? My brother told me about that experience. It comes from carrying the weight of my aunts and my uncles who are older than I am and telling me stories. It comes from carrying the weight of being a pastor of a local church, as a youth pastor, and listening to the stories of young folks. So yeah, I'm dealing with all of that because we are dealing with all of that. Have you ever heard of Ubuntu? Ubuntu is the African adage that I am because we are, or yes, I am because we are. Ubuntu. So I am teed off because we are teed off. Yeah, so it's just one of those things. So then let me see what you all are saying before I get to the I see you, Miss Michelle. I dislike when we call each other the N-word. Yeah, and it's accepted as a positive in our culture. And I've had a conversation with a black man about that. And I just said, tell me about that, because you are comfortable with it. And what he said to me was, for him, a negative, a negative term has been transformed into a term of endearment between brothers or between, whoever. But again, we have to ask ourselves, remember what I said, sometimes we're blind to these traumatic values that we place even on our families and our relationships. Those things we did not create, but we're holding on to it. That's trauma retention. So they created this need for a, N-word, because like James Baldwin said, white people have to reckon with why they created N in the first place. They have to ask themselves that. He said, because I'm not an N, I'm a man. So yeah, but we have to reckon in our community with that idea that there are some of us who believe that it's a term of endearment. But I just think that that's an example of trauma retention. That's an example. I'm going to hold on to this negative thing. And for a matter of fact, I can do something with it. So instead of throwing it out, I'm going to just hold on to it. Just like we hold on to so many other things that the dominant culture has placed on us. I see you, Sean, you effectively and effortlessly affected me and Miss Nunu. Oh, well, praise God on Sunday. I see you, Brother Carl. Speak positive and great things come back in return. Amen. Yeah, I'm keeping it real. I'm trying to, Brother Coleman. Miss LaShawn, come on, Dr. McCoy. You better say it loud. It's not what you call me. It's what I answer to. There you go. That's right. I said that in the sermon on Sunday. God bless you. God bless you all. I tell you, this is a lot, but it's necessary. So because it's been a lot, here we go. Remember what I told you. In this book, he has these body practices. Because as he said, there's a lot of things that you will read and that you will feel, and it will happen in your body. There will be a response. And so he takes care of us by having these body practices. So as we close this evening, I'm not going to leave you after 4 weeks. This is the 4th week with all of this without respecting your body and respecting this author. Remember who it is, okay? Mr. Resva Menakem, My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma, and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. So here's this body practice. As before, he says, find a quiet, comfortable place where you can be alone. And you can do this later. A quiet, comfortable place where you can be alone. Allow 5 to 10 minutes for each of the following 4 activities. Oh, let me mention microaggression before I do this, because he talks about microaggressions in here, and I'm not going to assume that everybody knows. Have you ever sat in a classroom and somebody's teaching and you're sitting there like, I wish they would tell me the meaning of that word. So you may know, but I'm going to give us, for the purposes of this gathering, before I get into this body practice, because I don't want to talk about microaggressions. And people are like, well, gosh, I got to go Google it. No, you don't have to, okay? So a microaggression, I'm going to give you some examples, but it's an indirect or like a subtle, sometimes unintentional discrimination against like a member of a discriminated group, or a marginalized group, I should say. So it's one of those things that can be verbal. It can be, sometimes people think microaggressions are only verbal. That's not true. Microaggressions can also be behavioral. Microaggressions can also be comments. It can be environmental. It can be assumptions. It can be jokes. So let me give you an example. I found something that I wanted to share with you. I think I still have it. But there were types of microaggressions that I found. Oh, it was so good. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is not the one I wanted to find. If you Google it, you can find different things. There was something that I found, though, that I really wanted to share with you. But this is what came up. And for the sake of time, it's 7:43. But like you all tell me, don't worry about the time. If people want to leave, they can leave and they can come back. This is a microaggression if I'm speaking. You don't act like other gay guys. You should smile more. Any black women in the house? It's like, if I'm not smiling, I'm an angry black woman. That's a microaggression. You should smile more. You have a pretty smile. Can I touch your hair? Now I'm a museum exhibit. They don't even let you touch the items in the museum that you want to touch. I'm on display. Can I touch your hair? That's a microaggression. This one. You speak English so well. As if the English language is limited to like one group of people or something. Like, I've even heard black people say, you talk white. I'm like, I didn't realize English was white. Yeah. But there were some more things that I wanted to, maybe I'll just talk about that by itself some other time. But I believe you all know what it is. So you're good. So let's do the body practice, okay? Let's do that. I see you all, I see some laughing. Yeah. I'm like on display, right? He's like, oh, your skin is, do you have makeup on? And even now I put on some you know, like some lipstick. You know, a lot of times I just wear gloss, but I never put anything like on my face. Like I just don't, because I have sensitive skin and I'm afraid to wear like makeup on my face. So you'll see me with something on my lips. But it's like, I've had people say before, oh, your skin is just so, and I'm like, it's just skin. Like, I'm thinking I look like everybody else, you know. And don't get me wrong, I know the difference between a compliment and a microaggression. Like, I'm just a black woman. This is what black people look like. I mean, I guess, isn't it what y'all look like? I mean, it's just like, okay, whatever. But yeah, and your hair, you know, oh, your hair is just so, and I'm like, yeah, black people can grow long hair, you know, so it's just those types of things, you know. So I'm not trying to put anybody down or say anything. You wear makeup, that's fine. You know, treat your hair with something, that's fine. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying we have to be careful in America about what we say to one another, you know, and how we devalue just people being just people. I'm just a regular human, just like you. I mean, God just made me like this. So, okay, here we go as we close, okay? Body practice. You see, this is why I have to do these body practices. This is why I have to do them. You know, I do this and I'm a healthy human because I take care of my body. And I'm not talking about, some people think about like just going to the gym or just trying to eat right. No, no, no. I take care of my body because my body has to go out there. So find a quiet, comfortable place where you can be alone. Allow 5 to 10 minutes for each of the following activities. So there's 4. I may read them all. Feel free to do them on separate occasions, all at once, or in any combination. So the first thing he says, think back to an incident in which you felt you were the target of a microaggression. The incident does not need to involve race or people of more than one race. Any mild passive-aggressive move, you know, because it could be something like, you're not like other women. What does that mean? Now, replay that incident in your mind from beginning to end. When and how did the event turn ugly, if it did? When and how did you recognize it was a microaggression? Now replay the event again. This time, focus on your body and its reactions. At what point does your body tell you that something is wrong? Something about this is not right. This is not a compliment. How does your body let you know this? When, where, and how does it experience pain or discomfort? Where, when, and how does it feel good? Where, when, and how does it constrict, move, or activate, or release? Okay, here's another one. This is another exercise. Recall an incident in which you committed a microaggression against someone else, either deliberately or unconsciously. So it's not just about you having that pain inflicted on you. Have you ever inflicted that pain on someone else? Maybe you saw somebody who, you know, they said they were gay and you were like, you're gay? You know, like even in the black community, we say like they're down low brothers or whatever, like men who just don't look gay. You know, could that be a microaggression? Just think about it. How could he be gay? He's good looking. Isn't it sad that we do these things? And as Christians, isn't it even more tragic? What do you mean he doesn't look gay? What is that to say? So again, it does not need to involve race. Like I just gave an example. That's not in the book. But any mild passive aggressiveness counts as a microaggression. I see you, Miss Michelle Williams. Can be painful. That's right. So then replay that incident, he says. Okay. And then I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to just stop right there, okay? Because I am just so, I'm just so appreciative to you all. But I hope I've given you enough information. I mean, I couldn't get through the whole book, so I just stopped at chapter 5 with you. But, like, there's so much more. Like, in chapter 10, he talks about your soul nerve. Oh, my goodness. It is just so good. Like, I have information. Like, just if... And I do not know this guy. I'm not trying to, I wish I knew him, but I'm not trying to get you to support anybody I know. I'm getting you to support the idea of healing from racialized trauma in America. I'm helping you, hopefully, to come on board with the idea that the fact that you deserve healing in your life. And we all in America need to be healed from white supremacy. So thank you. That's my mom saying you did a wonderful job. Well, thank you, Mom. This is done now, but hey, maybe I'll come back through because I like I said, I use this book to teach. But just want to remind you that tomorrow is Economic Blackout Day. Economic Blackout Day. So I just want to remind us of what that means. There are lists of what not to do. Do not make any purchases. Do not shop online or in store. Do not spend money at fast food places, gas places. If you need to do it, go now. Where I am, Eastern Standard Time, it's only $7.50. You have time to go fill up that car. You have time to go use that credit card or whatever now, because you don't need to do it on tomorrow. Tomorrow is blackout, economic blackout. Okay. Don't just say that it is a boycott. Make sure you understand exactly what's going on. Talk about it, post about it, document the actions from your day. And if you're not really a social media, like I don't post everything, but I will document. Documentation is so important. And if you must do something, do only if necessary. You can buy essentials like food, medicine, or emergency supplies. If you must spend, only support small businesses, local businesses. And as I've talked about before, support Black businesses, all right? And if you must spend, try to spend Black only, okay? And so this matters because there are corporations and banks that only care about their bottom line. I've been talking for the past 4 weeks about the problem that we have with people against those persons who don't have white skin. And so what we're trying to do is to let the broader parts of our society know that we matter, not just by wearing the shirt. I've got one too. Black Lives Matter. I matter. Not just by preaching it or saying it, not just by doing Bible studies or coming together like this, but when we're not watching, what are you doing? When you're not watching me, what am I doing? When I'm not watching you, what are you doing? So for one day, this is going to send a powerful message. This is the first action. First, be part of the first action, okay? And let's make history. So I won't be able to watch you, but I want you to hear me clearly. I'm looking at you right now, okay? I want you to hear me clearly. There are a lot of things that you just don't have to do. It's one day. It's one day. I dare not sit and talk about all of this, and then it just so happens there's an economic blackout on tomorrow. I've been talking about this for 3 weeks, and it just so happens that the powers that be is trying to bring us together so that we can do this. You can do this, okay? Don't just do it for you. Do it for your children. Do it for the future. Do it because sometimes in America, the only color that matters is green. So what will you do with your green tomorrow? Keep it in your pocket. God bless you. Have a good evening.